something else. And hey, you never know. I might end up running the show by myself without Dave. Oh, look at that. There's no Dave here. Welcome, everybody, to Talking Niagara this morning. Dave has said to me, Peter, get on with the show. I'll be along in a minute. I'm just so tired. I've been up all night. Right. So welcome to Talking Niagara. It's May the 1st. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our morning talk show about the news and everything that kind of matters to Niagara. So there we go. There's the introduction. Good morning, Mike. Well, you're bound to be there sometime. I know you are because you always listen. And good morning,
Mike. The steady
and good morning, Karen, and good morning, all the other people who come on. Yeah, so welcome, everybody.
Yes, indeed.
What's going on?
Nothing.
Nothing?
I did my taxes. I got them done at about 11 o'clock last night.
Oh, that's what. So you were doing your taxes and then you partied all night?
Well, then I was wide awake, so I kind of walked around and went to bed late because I was sort of still
partying.
Open.
Partying because you'd done your taxes.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, I suppose we've got to get our taxes done. My accountant's got mine and probably a big bundle of other stuff. Yeah. So, but I don't have to get mine done for another month.
Oh, okay.
Right, as self-employed, you have until the end of May because the taxes are more complicated.
You can claim charitable donations now from the 1st of January 2024 all the way to I think it's the 15th of February or maybe the month of February. In 14 months worth of charitable donations, you could do it all at once.
All right, okay. But how does that impact next year, though?
I don't know. It's just if you want to do it, I guess.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Go. Morning, Mike. We've already said good morning to you, so this is the second time. You should feel pleased.
Good morning, Blake.
Okay. So actually, you're right. Yesterday was tax day, and you got yours in. You got yours in with an hour to spare. Here's a question I always wonder: is like, okay, so the deadline is midnight on the 30th of April, right? But the internet goes down or something happens with the internet and it freezes till 12:01.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to penalize you, because wherever it happened, and they've probably got people who are doing it at 3 or 4 in the morning as well, actually. In any case, so if you think about it, 3 or 4 in the morning here is only midnight in BC, right? 3 in the morning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So there you go. Okay. So welcome everybody to first post-tax day. Now you've got to start collecting your taxes for next year.
Yes. We'll start to accumulate them again.
Yeah.
Or tariffs. I'd like to pay my tariff, please.
It's an interesting question while you're talking about tariffs. One came up yesterday that I was hearing about. Apparently, Amazon are giving you the option, giving US users the option to get on their bill a separate line that says tariffs.
No. I brought this up yesterday. Early in the show. What Bezos has done is the Amazon, not Bezos himself, but the Amazon crew wanted to put on the tariff on the bill, basically.
It's the right thing to do.
Trump freaked out, and it won't happen now.
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do anyway, irrespective.
Well, yeah, it was like basically it's what you do is you get all the different taxes and tariffs tax, right? And so it's listed on the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they call it a malicious political move. Well, it was Bezos' underlings that did it, and they did it for the obvious reason, obviously, because you list the taxes when you get.
Well, when you do it
on all the different categories are listed there. The duty that may have been paid on it,
well,
and
it's right because
that are owing, etc.
Yeah, it's right because you don't know who the buyer is. The buyer may well be an individual person where those taxes don't matter, but the buyer may actually be a corporate buyer where those taxes absolutely do matter. So you need them broken down.
You need that broken down when you go to the grocery store, when you go to the drugstore. You get all that right there on your receipt. It's just what you should do.
Yeah. Well, you as an individual,
everybody does basically. Yeah. When I go and get my car fixed at the mechanic, they break down, they put in the taxes there.
Yeah, and everybody, most people don't need that because it may have a minor impact upon your taxes next year when you calculate your taxes, but businesses absolutely do need that.
Well, yeah, but the basic thing is when you buy something, you want to know what you're buying, right? So if you're buying a pair of shoes that's $100 and the tax on it is another 18% or whatever it is, then you pay $118. Well, in this case, they were doing the same thing. They were just adding the tariff, which is a tax like you normally would list. But Trump freaked out. And so it's not going to happen now.
Because it's making it clear to Americans that, in fact, that's actually where this tax is coming from. You know, who's paying the tax, right?
Yeah. Just like we said yesterday.
Well, and so Mike is saying, so telling the truth now is a malicious political move.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yes.
Absolutely, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Ontario school boards need to change, says Ford. And a lot of this is the Ontario government has been making moves for more control over school boards, particularly in response to the financial mismanagement of the one that we were talking about before with those religious paintings, religious artwork.
Yes, what's happening here is the education minister is livid, basically. Yeah. He's finding the boards are overextending their authority and their ability, and they're taking advantage of the money. They're interfering with schools, education too, all kinds of things. So he's going in deep on the Toronto separate and public schools. He's going in deep on the Thames group, and of course, the one that got the most news was the Haldeman Catholic School Board, basically.
Yeah.
Brantford Haldeman School Board that went to Italy to buy expensive art pieces, and on the way they had a $45,000 holiday while doing it.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, exactly. When you paint it like that, which most people look at, of course, that's absolutely disgusting.
Yes, and how they thought that was a good thing, but the board gets these ideas in their head. Sometimes I have a feeling that a bunch of friends are the ones that get in to these boards, and so they pretty much scandalize all Ontario now. And the one in I think in the one in Thames, it's actually a provincial administrator has gone down there and replaced the board, the trustees.
Yeah, they're gone. Actually, that was actually one of the a few years ago in the municipal elections. I had a somebody running for the school board trustee come knock at my door, and I was like quite surprised. And but what she was telling me was that actually the main reason that she was running was because she was disgusted about how many people knew each other, how buddy they were at the school board.
Well, yeah, it's obviously true now. They're all buddy. You can't get away with everybody knows spending $45,000 of provincial money to go to board the school's money.
Yeah,
going to Italy. A handful of people spend $45,000, then buy a $100,000 piece of art.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that's wrong.
Yeah.
And the only way you could try to sneak that through is if you're, on a board, like that
Yeah.
wouldn't steal on one another.
And the only other reason why a school board might well be sending people to Italy is not to buy artwork, but to attend an international school conference.
No way. There's no way that Ontario should be sending anybody halfway around the world when there's perfectly good educational programs here.
Well, I was going to say, arguably, if anybody sends anybody, it would be Education Minister Paul Calandra and somebody at the provincial level that would go to such an event.
No, well, yeah, well, it's very great, extraordinary, unlikely example there.
Yeah. But I know, and I'm painting an if, right? That's about the only way I could see that it would have any relevance whatsoever.
Yeah, it should be brought in front of the parents anyway. But they slipped this one through. Now, the counter narrative here from NDP Styles Merritt, or Merritt Styles, pardon me, a former school trustee, said that most challenges to tie back to the inadequate funding and claiming the government as targeting boards as a distraction. So she says it's a big distraction because basically what they're doing is they're not giving them enough money. Well, I don't think that works, Merritt, because they've brought a lot of attention to the schools, and you always know that there's going to be overlap. So if somebody starts looking at the schools and then decides the trustees are not doing what they're supposed to do, but look here also, they don't have enough money per student. So basically she's kind of deflected this towards the lack of money that's going to the schools per student, and that has gone down.
But again, how much of that, given that she's the leader of the opposition here in Ontario, is political pressure from a political opponent?
Well, that's exactly it. So what she's done is just basically segued this and talked about schools that have enough money. You would think the schools that don't have enough money and their trustees are going to Italy or are going to the Sky Dome for baseball games and weekends into Toronto, Sky Dome vacations. That's what I think the Thames did. And being so inadequate that the government has to had to replace them with an administrator, that kind of thing. So she carries on. She says, despite spending more on education each year, about $29 billion, that amount has not kept up with inflation or the real costs boards face. And Stiles said that the overall per student funding has decreased by $1,500 under the Ford government. Well, that's a different topic altogether, basically, but she sees the window to bring that in and start discussing it. So, well, good for her. She shone a little light on maybe inadequate funding.
Yeah, but again, what do you expect out of sorry, was that Styles you said would do
Styles,
that?
Yeah. So that's her job.
It's her job, right? It's her job. I expect her to. If she doesn't do so, I'd think she's failing in some way.
Yeah. So she says they're spending more than they're getting from this government. Not only has the government failed to provide guidance for schools on these issues, secularism, restraints, exclusion, but there is also provincial data being tracked. Instead, schools boards are created and implementing their own policies. Well, obviously, there's a problem with that there too. And of course, the Green, Alison Clancy, brought up there are controversies at the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, where some trustees have been trying to ban the rainbow pride flag. Unfortunately, these hateful actions are just the tip of the iceberg. Waterloo Catholic district board. She said said to the legislature included a recent $200,000 bill for legal fees related to code of conduct issues among trustees. So there's a whole lot of problems there, aren't there?
There's code of conduct issues. Yeah, that's got to be worrisome.
Yeah.
But again, code of conduct issues do happen, like there were, like the reporting that goes on to the integrity commissioner for each of the city councils, right?
Yeah.
That probably isn't that much money if you're talking about the whole of Ontario.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but still, why is this happening? You would think a board of trustees would be like pretty much like, everybody's mother and father, and sit on there and pretty much just go at business and save as many pennies as possible and that kind of thing. But look, here's another one. Both Toronto boards are running large deficits, and the Thames Valley board landed in hot water after administrators took a pricey retreat at the former Sky Dome Hotel in Toronto. And of course, it goes on. So basically saying, oh, we deserve a break here. Let's go to the Sky Dome Hotel, watch a baseball game. I don't even know where you get that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, look, and they're not supposed to. I just don't get it.
Well, there's
doing the exact opposite of that. That is a terrible example.
Yeah. There's a number of school boards that are running large deficits. A Thames Valley District School Board, the Toronto District School Board, the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, the Toronto Catholic District School Board are some of the ones that are of biggest concern right now.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I see why Doug Ford is saying things have got to change.
Well, yeah, I don't feel comfortable this way. Do you? I'm paying taxes.
Yeah.
And other people are paying taxes. And what I want an accountant in there. I want an accountant basic mindset in there where you just do your job and you don't get seen. I don't want to find my trustees going to Italy or going to the Sky Dome because we deserve it. And come on, you took on that job for a reason. You took on a job that is not a job that you get fame or glory out of, and it's not a job where you get perks.
It's not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not a job you're going to get fame and glory out of or get perks. What you are there for, first and foremost, is to be essentially a guardian of our children's education. If you're going to kick up a fuss, it's going to be because, and just to take our local school board, it's because NDSB is not doing enough for the children. They made a bad decision not to buy certain books, for example. That might be the thing you make a fuss about.
You know what? I'm kind of glad this has happened because obviously there's been a lot of excesses going on, and we do need this oversight. We can't really trust it. Like, it kills me that a trustee elected in that you might get one or two bad apples, but when you get a whole school board trustees going to Italy, and they absolutely got to know that was wrong, but thought they could get away with it. How many other things have the trustees got away with in Ontario?
Yeah.
The fact that we have to have oversight now, I think it's a good thing. We're probably going to save a lot of money. And one of the boards is, like I said before, is already being replaced by the government. And that's what the government is saying. Look, if we find something wrong, you're out. We're throwing you out. And we're taking over.
Yeah.
You do your job and you do your job well. But let me take my hat off to also mention that I am very sure that the vast amount of trustees do their job and don't expect a holiday.
And probably even in those places where that we've highlighted, the vast amount of trustees probably do their job and do it well, even in those districts that we talked about.
I don't know. They should maybe they're the ones that are ratting out the others or something. I don't know.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. Right, and Donna Attridge is saying third-party accountant investigations should be mandated each quarter. I don't know about each quarter, but certainly every financial year.
Yeah, that's good. Good idea, Donna. Good idea. How much? But yeah, just an accounting for sure.
Yeah.
Not a forensic accounting, that costs too much. But yes, a strict accounting, and the monies are displayed and submitted to the government, and also
Yeah,
more importantly
to us.
to the
Yeah,
parents of the children in that
yeah,
particular school board.
yeah. To us, to us, we need to be seeing what the NDSP, Niagara District School Board has got to spend, right, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts about that one?
No, I think that's the sum of it. Sadly, the government's had to step in
Yeah.
and do this. And I will want to point out that I'm very sure that the vast amount of trustees are those are so that ubiquitous accountant type of person that goes there and gets the job done for the benefit of the school board. But of course, you've got these outliers who think they took advantage of money and they
Yeah.
spent
Oh,
it on
absolutely.
themselves.
Yeah.
So basically, they should be hang drawn and quartered, but we're much kinder in our society. So if they're just flogged 98 times in public, that'd be fine.
Yeah, and as Donna was saying, we need more transparency to the public. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's where we can kind of put the lid on it there. There are three ways that the US Canada trade dispute will end. Right, there's good, there's bad, and there's the absolute messy.
The good, the bad, and the messy.
Yeah.
Basically, they didn't say ugly, but that's what they wanted to say. I guess maybe there might be a too common a phrase, but I think that's what they wanted to say, but they put messy instead.
Well, I have to take exception to that. Lionel Messi is a truly excellent football player. Oh, you're not talking football.
Now, this is a fairly interesting article that takes three different views of how this is all going to end up.
Yeah.
Now, the three different views they do take from this is fairly famous people that are in the know. Like, I'm trying to get to the first one. Robert Litzinger told Canada Strong at a free. He says, "Whatever is going on now is not going to last, and it'll be fine." So here's a guy that's the optimist. I guess he's the good guy. He figures that it'll shake itself out, and just like last time when Donald Trump beat his chest and demanded a new agreement, when we got one, it wasn't much different from the one we had before, but he could tell the whole world what a great deal maker he was. Yeah. I think probably this will happen too. Basically, there are going to be a few things they target to make themselves look good. They're going to go after milk and eggs and stuff like that, which makes up a tiny sliver of a 1% of our trade with the U.S., but nonetheless, those are kinds of things. They want to get into our banking. They want, like, they're already here. That what Donald Trump says about the banking is wrong. American banks are already here, but they have to play by our rules.
Yeah, but again, Canadians, like places like BMO and other Canadian banks also own a certain chunk of the American banks.
Yeah, well, that wasn't well. My point was, what he says is the American banks are not up here. That's wrong. But what they don't like is the rules that we play by up here.
Yeah,
they want more deregulation, but if they do, they'll swamp our banks. It's just like they're without Canadian content on our radio, we'd hear nothing but American music, basically.
Yeah.
So those are those protections we have with our banks. Otherwise, they get swamped. And I like to remind everybody, our banks didn't go under.
Yeah.
In the big 2008 stock market crash.
Yeah, we didn't lose a BMO, whereas the Americans lost Lehman Brothers.
Yeah, we didn't have to be supported by the government. We didn't have to have our government borrow money from China to pay to save us, because we still had
But by the way, you
glass
approval for your
type regulations.
you have approval for your flogging 98 times. By the way,
Yeah.
there you go.
You see how merciful I am? I could have made it 100.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you gave them two off for bad behavior, eh?
No, it's just because I'm merciful. Merciful.
All right. Yeah. Okay, but back to that. Okay, so yeah, but our country allows shadow banking where the rich hide their money and we all suffer.
Yeah, the regulations are the big thing. When they deregulated, and particularly investment, and they took the Glass-Steagall away, then that was the big problem. And I think it was who was the guru in the United States that was the Fed chief for forever? Was it Greenspan or
Greenspan? Yes, yeah, Greenspan. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that nobody could understand what he said, but everybody thought he was a genius.
He wasn't a genius. He was. He was actually. The thing is, he was very much into accountability. He was very good. Him and Mark Carney will get along well.
Well, he messed up because he's the one that pushed for deregulation, and he's the one that did not see the subprime mortgages coming. So he messed up big time. He, as a matter of fact, he said he didn't see it coming, where everybody else, of course, in retrospect, could see it coming. But he could see the investment banks were getting extremely greedy, and yet somehow he didn't pick it up, where others did, and their warnings were not heeded.
Yeah.
But in any case, aside from him, he could have been a genius, but just missed on that one. But Lesser said that Canada might gain the competitive edge in tariffs because basically we're going for other countries to deal with. We're expanding our horizons.
Yeah. The other thing to note, of course, is that if your stock market changes since the beginning of the year, the TSX is more or less back now to where it was at the beginning of the year in January. The Dow is probably minus 5% underneath where it was at the beginning of the year. The NASDAQ is 10% underneath where it was at the beginning of the year, but they are recovering.
They're kind of recovering because they're only recovering on the whims. Right now they're only recovering on whims. If Trump inks a deal with China, then it will go back up. But if the China thing blingers, it'll go back down.
But again,
all this business about investment coming into the States, that's only promised, and it won't go ahead unless there's a stable market to deal with, stable deals. That is, and right now the American economy looks very, very good because people are buying up stuff like crazy.
Yeah.
So it looks as if the American public has got a lot of money and are buying a lot of things, but the reason why they're buying them is trying to get them before the tariffs come into place.
Well, I was going to say the shrewd investor in the US, in the stock exchange, would have sold mid-February, kept his money, and when early April, when the markets had crashed somewhere near 20%, now's the time to buy and probably double down on the stock that you once owned.
I think you're just wise to just listen to Trump. I think probably a lot of people are savvy on that way.
Yeah.
He's going to say something. So when the stock goes down, buy it because he's going to say something in a couple of days that will give hope to the stock market and it'll go back up. And then he'll say something. As soon as it goes back up in a day or two, sell it because he's going to say something stupid and it's going to go back down again.
Yeah.
And so the seesaw battle. But right now, the stock market wants to believe that things are going to go better with ideas of of trade deals, particularly India. They claim that they're going to be able to ink one with India very soon, a sort of tariff-free. And what India is going to do is put the United States on its most favored nation status list, which means that the U.S. Goods can come into India duty-free, and the other way around. What they're trying to do is look for a replacement, a massive market like India, and a place where they can get massive amounts of dirt cheap labor. I think they're just looking for a replacement from India, but for China. But that anyway, so that aside, when you get back into our
yeah, but again, India is part of the BRICS, BRICS system, and in fact, actually, given how the US seems to play well to China and Russia, that's the third of the 5 members of BRICS, 3 of 5 members of BRICS that they play well with.
You know what, though, that could open the market, the backdoor market for U.S. products into BRICS.
Of course,
because if you're sending your I don't know, you're sending your parts to India, and then they get work done and added value to it, and then they go and sell it to the rest of the world. So I think it's probably a very, very good idea. But anyway, so there are other opinions here. There are opinions where things get really rough between Canada and the U.S. And the messy middle, basically, unpredictable president, all these kind of things. Says, and of course, there's a Democrat, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, pretty much said when he was talking about it, he just said, "What is the plan?" And because each word had a period following it. And each word was capital. So in the last week, the White House has been all over the map. Basically, I think Trump, if he doesn't ink some deals, he doesn't get, if he gets angry, he's going to start being angry at the Canada. He'll probably try to carve off of Alberta out of Canada. He'll offer them instead of Canada, the 51st state. He'll offer Alberta. We really have to work on keeping Alberta and making sure that they're that they know we appreciate them. I remember years ago, Ontario got Albertans were very, very anti-Ontario, but when they had a problem, a drought, and they couldn't make enough hay for their cattle, and it looked bad, who came to the rescue? Ontario farmers. So Ontario gathered up as much extra hay and sent it out west, which saved them. And it kind of opened the Albertans' eyes. Oh, they're all not ugly Easterners, trying to scam
Well, let's move on to that question of Alberta, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. So
because Mark Carney is offering scenarios. Offering some change to Alberta, but many Albertans, of course, are saying it's not enough.
Yes, I hope that my personal feeling as a Canadian is just that we have the Liberal government has not been kind to Albertans. It is expected Alberta to be the ones that have to pay for the most of the carbon that we emit. We can't shrink it anywhere else, so we're going to make sure the only place we can do that is Alberta in a big way, and the only way you can do that is reduce production, which tells me that I'm very unhappy that same Liberal members are still in Parliament, and I hope Carney picks wisely there. But anyway, yes, Alberta is really on the cusp. It's being pushed around too often by Eastern Canada. Eastern Canada's got all the wealth. It's got the big banks. It's got the big industry and all that. And the Ontario is like Ontario is the United States of Canada, basically. The United States is big and powerful and very egocentric and very selfish for its own desires, right? And that's what Ontario looks like to the rest of Canada. Is the ugly American in Canada, basically. And of course, when you go down to the United States, we find that the ugly American is not the ugly American. The American people are fine and beautiful and friendly and whatever, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Politics does not measure up to what people are.
Oh,
So
no, absolutely.
yeah. So I think Carney has really got to do this, and he's got to do it quick, and he's got to say, and as Danielle Smith says, like she's halfway to cessationist anyway. She's a very, very conservative right-wing person. And we have to remember, too, we have to do what we can to appease the average Albertan, because the next government might be the NDP again, because that was before Danielle Smith. And the NDP, provincial NDP in Alberta, are cutting ties with the federal because they don't like what the federal NDP has become. So there's all kinds of indications that maybe we're better off on our own, because you keep meddling in our stuff, and you certainly don't have the same ideologies that we have or concerns. So that has to be reversed in a big way. And what Danielle Smith says is basically an autonomous Alberta within Canada. It's very similar, like Quebec is.
It's a very similar attitude to Quebec. There's also people that believe the same out of Ontario, by the way.
Yeah. What do you mean, a separation?
Not separation, but basically that some form of autonomy where Ontario gets its fair due. Because the view of a lot of people is that Ontario pays too much into the Fed bucket, and we never get anything back.
Well, Alberta's the one that's been feeding that bucket big time, and is feeding it out of oil.
Oh, I know.
And you can understand the thing. Oh, okay, Quebec, you don't want the pipeline going through Quebec, but you're really happy to get the transfer payments that ultimately come from Alberta. What about that? We're the ones that are pouring more into the pot than anyone else, but you're happy to take the transfer payments that you get because you can't hold yourself up like we can, and yet you don't want a pipeline across here. You don't want to work with us. So you can understand the frustration. At one time, it was Ontario the one that's paying the most, but Alberta is lately, and they may pull out a CPP as well, and because they put more into it than others do. So you can understand their frustration. We're doing all this, and yet you keep meddling in our affairs and want more and more out of us for less and less.
Yeah.
And that's because they can lean on Alberta. They can't lean on Quebec or Ontario. There are too many votes there. But you can lean on Alberta. So what if we put them off a bit? They're not going to be able to decide an election. That's really the wrong idea. And I believe the Trudeau government was terrible to the West, and I really couldn't believe it.
Absolutely.
And she was quite right.
And Trudeau was, you see, the big problem about Trudeau was more or less this question about you in Alberta are going to be green, and you're going to be green ahead of the rest of us, and you're going to do it in an unreasonable time.
Yeah, we want your money. We want 11% of our GDP comes from your oil, but we don't want you to make any gas doing it. We don't want you to make any carbon doing it. And guess what? You know what? We want your money, but what you're doing is bad. Naughty.
Yeah, and that was the problem with the Trudeau Liberals.
Yeah, they're very unrealistic, ideologically spent, and I don't mind ideology, but ideology has to be turned into practical ideas.
Yeah, ideology is a longer term goal rather than short term progress, because you can get to the longer term goal. You've just got to make steps in the shorter term to get there.
Well, sure, just like Miss those beauty contest ladies would always say, what is your hope for the world? I hope the world is full of world hunger is finished, like done. Well, yeah. Well, you can't do it right away, so start feeding the guy next to you. That's a good start.
That's all right. They don't eat anything anyway, those beauty beauty queens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like one with a little bit more meat, you know what I mean?
There we go. There we go. Okay. So, so anything else about Alberta that comes to mind? I think we've got to get something moving. Carney's got to actually talk with Alberta, because Alberta's part and parcel of actually bringing down the internal tariffs. One of the questions has always been about this pipeline across the country, and the other ingredient about that pipeline is getting Quebec off their butt.
Well, Ford's got on his back right away too. It's not just not Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith says, well, you said really nice things, but talk is cheap. And
Ford, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and Ford's come on and said, right now, let's get it done. Let's open these mines. Let's do it now. We need to move ahead. He's talking about the layers of bureaucracy, the federal government, the provincial government, and all that. I'm not too happy with him not dissolving C-69. That is still a potential to bog up the works. I think that the provincial government is the only one that has to have an environmental plan. Basically, this is Ontario's ring of fire. That's Ontario's mine. We do an environmental assessment. It is vetted by anybody that wants to have vetted. We don't need another expensive federal government coming around and saying, doing the same thing and looking for minor glitches here and there. The federal government layering on more bureaucracy makes the whole thing Byzantine.
Yeah,
that's why it takes 15 years to open a mine. Anywhere else, it takes 5, maybe less. And so there's all this.
Obviously taking a mine, there's various ecological and and safety factors that you've got to do in order to start digging it and opening it, right?
I think but they overdo it, they stall, and everybody's worried that did I miss something? Did I miss something? So they have to go back and back and back. And
what we don't need is 1,300 levels.
A bureaucrat can really milk something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And the problem is we have 1,300 levels of bureaucracy, don't we?
That's it, the layering on of bureaucracy.
Yeah,
and I think Doug Ford's right. And you know what? Myself, I've always been frustrated by that because I worked in the trades, and I could see the northern boys come down here and work during the summertime when there was a lot of work down here, and then go back up, and there was lots of mines and things on paper waiting to go, and that's where they could work, and a lot of other people could work. But the government always stepped in and stalled things. It was like, oh no, we can't. The environment is right, but once you get that recipe right, you still need iron ore. So if somebody comes along and says, we can't dig any iron ore because it's going to be bad for the environment. Well, yeah. Well, so is that road. So is, I mean, it's going to mess the environment up. Well, you still need steel. Where you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Yep. Where you're going to get it. You're going to have to dig a hole.
And digging a hole is essential for building things like steel, right? But again, so long as we do that right, there's nothing wrong with digging a hole.
Well, in Ghana, they have a law for all the miners, of course, come from offshore, Australians, Canadians, that kind of thing. And most of the mining is open pit.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of the gold mining is open pit. So they have, of course, you can think there's these gigantic holes in, but once they exhaust the mine, the law there is that they have to return it as close to the original as possible.
Yeah.
So that's what you do. I mean, you got to
Well,
dig a
that's
big
the
ugly.
same.
You got a big ugly hole somewhere in Ontario, but when the mine is exhausted, you fill it back in, and away you go, and
Yeah.
start again.
That's the same. That's the same in Ontario. That's the same in Yukon. You know, Yukon, where they do a lot of the gold mining, it's done by strip mining. You strip an area, you mine it down to the bedrock because that's where you find the gold, right on the edge of the rock of the bedrock. Then you fill it back in again.
Yeah, I was walking around the strip mines, the open pit mines in Ghana, but but on the other hand, there's a lot of illegal miners called Galamsey miners.
Yeah.
And so they're the locals that go out and they mine, and they make a terrible mess of the environment. They never fix it. When they scar up the countryside, they leave it that way. And the companies are always pointing that out to the government. You know, you can wave your finger at us and ask for another tree planted here and there, but you're not doing anything about that big hole in the ground right beside us. And you know what? Some of those are so dangerous. I'll talk about that some other place. But where I was, five guys died every week in the Galamsey mines in a 10-mile radius where I was from. That's something.
Yeah,
maybe it was a month. Probably more like a month. But I remember it as a week. But it's probably more like a month. But that's what was happening.
Well,
anyway, we'll talk about that later. Right?
Yeah, and that's something that I think it brings concern as well. Yeah, and you know, but to get back to Alberta, we basically need them. We need them to be on board on side.
Yeah, it's like Doug Ford says, let's do it. Everybody's been itching to take advantage of the Ring of Fire in Ontario. It is, if you don't know what that is, it is what's left over of an ancient meteor that crashed into Ontario. And of course, the most famous mine that's resulted in that event is the ones in Copper Cliff in Sudbury, the nickel and copper plants there. They're rich in those minerals or those metals because of the meteor collision they had there. But the Ring of Fire extends in a big arc in Northern Ontario. Northern Ontario needs development like crazy. They're losing people all the time. Why? Because there's no work. Yeah. But right there's all kinds of potential for work. All the mines that used to be running, the gold mines and everything else, and the lumber camp, all that is all stalled generation after generation. I mean, I spent 25 years in as a construction millwright, and I could tell you that those projects that we expected were going to happen in Northern Ontario in the 90s didn't happen, and because of there was too much protest against it, and then it didn't happen in the early 2000s, and then it didn't happen in so basically the sport's saying we're fed up. There's enough stalls. I mean, we have to jump through hoops just to build a road, and it's just bureaucratic entanglement. When basically there is the chromium. We want the chromium, right? We need it. We don't want to buy it from offshore. We have it right under our feet. So let's figure out a way of getting it, and quit stalling. Every government official is worried about criticism of green lighting a project because they may come under a lot of criticism from environmental groups or others. So I think Doug Ford is right. I think Carney, the two things he can do right now is green light, make it much more much more streamlined, the whole process, so we can start making use of these things that we have but aren't using.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we need to be sharing those things that we haven't been sharing before as well.
Okay, you share with me, and I'm sure.
I mean, across the borders, right?
Look, yeah, this whole New Brunswick, New Brunswick has been a bit of a leader in breaking down those interprovincial borders. They've always had a problem with Quebec. They have a lot of Quebec people moving in and staying in, living in New Brunswick,
Of course, yeah.
and then going back into Quebec and working, whereas somebody from New Brunswick cannot go into Quebec and work. But you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's always been an issue with Quebec. They've but each different province has different restrictions on labor. Like, I was very surprised that they had no coordinated trucking rules. Believe me, you don't.
Yeah.
After all these years, you can't come together. Each different province has its own rules with trucking.
And what happens? What happens if you're taking a truck from Quebec to BC? It's got to pass through so many borders.
Yeah, so the trucking regulations should be one uniform across the nation, and other rules like that. So we've put up trade barriers between one another that kind of made sense, maybe just to protect ourselves locally. It's been very
well, maybe they made
very parochial. Let's put it that way. We've been very parochial.
Yeah,
being a little person looking at our little pile of stuff.
Yeah,
and we don't want the stuff over there to come over here.
Yeah, and we've been probably too blind on that thing to change it.
Well, we didn't really have to put any effort in it because our big buddy down south was trading with us from free trade. Why do we need a free trade with the provinces when we can free trade with our buddy to the south? And we'll work about the interprovincial stuff later. It's just preposterous. If you buy some beer in Quebec, you can't take it into Ontario. Seriously?
Yeah. Well, in fact, actually, there was some beer. I bought some beer in Quebec. Which is the same beer you get here in Ontario.
You criminal! You criminal! I'm surprised you admitted it right here on.
No, I didn't say I bought it.
You're a beer smuggler.
I didn't say I bought it, Dave. I said I bought some beer in Quebec. I didn't say I brought it. It was just the brands I wanted were more readily available in Quebec than they were in Ontario. I can get those, but they're more, I have to go to the right LCBO to get them, whereas they were just in the corner store in Quebec.
You've heard of people smugglers? Well, here is Peter Giblett, beer smuggler.
I didn't smuggle beer. I had a nice drink while I was out there.
Yeah, beer smuggler.
And actually, would they be able to stop individuals smuggling, moving beer anyway?
Well, they keep an eye on the border for people to load up and cross the border, but it's preposterous. Basically, it's just because Ontario is trying to protect their breweries. They got more tax on. They want the tax from the beer that Quebec will be getting, and it's cheaper in Quebec, I guess. So there's that. Anyone that lives around the border of Quebec, they always go dodge over there to get beer because it's cheaper. It's like we used to do, like we do right here. I used to sneak a case of beer back from the States all the time. Go over there for some gas, case of beer, and some groceries.
Yeah. All right. Okay, moving on to our last thing. China's drawing up a list of exempt U.S. products, U.S. goods that it's going to be allowing to on its whitelist that has not been previously reported.
Yeah, we see that the tensions are easing a little by little. At first, there's this big block. We're going to put 145% on you, and China comes back. We're going to put 125% on you. Nothing's exempt. Then Trump goes, well, maybe electronics, and well, maybe this or maybe that. And so little by little, the tariffs are going down on specific materials that are coming from China. And it's the other way too. China's gone and said, well, yeah, nothing's coming in. And then, oh, well, maybe not this one. We'll leave this one exempt.
Yeah, maybe we'll have beef. Maybe we'll have,
Yes. So but China's doing it in a little bit like China would do. It's sent out inquirers to go around from business to business to business, saying, "What do you need? What do you need? What can't you get at home?" And then we're going to look to make sure that you can get it. So ethanol, I think, is one of them, or something. There's some kind of ethene or something like that. It's only made in the States. So of course the barriers dropped on that one.
Yeah.
Because China needs it. So you see the softening of the edges of these two hard walls of tariffs.
Oh yeah.
Little crumbling going on here and there. The States exempt some stuff, then China exempts some stuff. Of course, China can do it more quietly because it can control the media and so on.
Yeah.
But this has all come out. So they have what's called a white paper list, and that's a list of articles that will be exempt. So you see the softening. You see the softening of the positions happening.
Yeah, I just want to see that white list.
Yeah.
I expected to see the white list when I opened the article.
Yeah, and I expect you're going to see also a deal because China has got right into that propaganda stuff. They've made a film about how China is the reliable trade partner in the world. The U.S. is not. The U.S. is a big gluttonous pig, and it is a predator. Yeah. And you can trust China, but beware. And we're on your side because we're China. We're on your side. We're the good guys. That big gluttonous pig over there.
The irony is I've seen some of that video, and you kind of go, "Well, this is China."
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're getting right into they're using social media like all the other influencers are.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're learning their lessons. In the meantime, they're making it very clear that we're not gonna move, but we see it by the whitelist. They are basically behind the scenes, slowly breaking down some of the barriers. And the States is doing the same. I don't know. They just have to meet in Hawaii.
The interesting thing is about that video is how perfect it is in very good English.
Yeah. No, you're not going to get. It's going to be flawless because. And they probably, you know what? They probably hired American ad executives to come up with the video. You know what I mean?
More than likely.
Yeah. You know, so they've done a really good job of propagandizing, and I don't know, but it's pretty hard to overcome the most famous person in the world, and I'll put that out there right now. I don't think there's been a more famous person in all the world history as is Donald Trump. Really, if you come to think of it,
like it or not, you can't get rid of his image, can you?
And he likes it that way, and he makes sure that everybody's talking about him every day. That's how he got elected.
Yeah, and in fact, like the thing we did about the article we did about 3 ways this Canada-U.S. trade dispute will end. Well, the picture in that particular one, of course, is a Donald Trump doll in front of a Canadian flag, in front of the White House, right?
Yes. He forces everybody to talk about him constantly, including on this show, because it's impossible not to.
Yeah.
And I'm putting that out there, he is the most famous person of all time right now because
I think he's a bit
because electronic media can get his image everywhere in the world.
I think he's
impossible I'm the poorest person in Africa driving by a little black and white TV will know who Donald Trump is.
Yeah, but again, he's a couple of inches behind Jesus Christ.
I'm not so sure. Donald Trump has said, well, many people say I'm the best president of all time. Maybe Lincoln's a little better than me, but I don't know. I'm pretty close to him. And, George Washington too. I'm probably pretty, and so he's going to say, well, Jesus was a pretty good guy, but I think I'm better than him now. He used to be the best person in the world that ever visited the world, but I think I'm there now. So yeah, so he has massive.
No. The best person in the world, I think, is in this room right now.
Oh, well, yeah, you have to live with yourself, don't you? And I would lie to myself too.
Oh, I wasn't talking about me.
Oh,
I wasn't talking about me. I was talking about Big Swellhead over there.
oh, me? Oh, well, yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't say I was the best person in the world. I would just say I'm the smartest. I got a huge brain. No, I use that when I used to tease my kid.
It's a good job we can joke with one another, eh?
Yeah. So that basically, yeah. So without a doubt, Donald Trump is probably the most famous person that's ever lived.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting there, that's for sure. And the fact is that every day that Donald Trump wasn't president, the newspapers, in some newspaper or other in America, mentioned his name or showed his picture, right?
Yeah. And like I said, it makes it impossible for anyone to avoid him.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely. And this whole question about the whole question about the trade, the tariffs and the world trade issue has been another way of focusing in on him.
Yeah. The great deal maker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Karen's saying we should all have a great day.
Yes, thank you, Karen. And I'll just put this there. Like, he is a showman. I was watching Malin Baker the other day, and Malin Baker, just keep this in mind. He is the ultimate showman. That's what he does. He has an instinct for the camera. He has an instinct for drama. He has an instinct for making, even when he had Zelensky and they were yelling at each other, and then he turns to the camera, this is going to make great TV, isn't it? As an aside. Well, he's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got a very good instinct for the moment in front of the camera. That's why he'd probably be the most famous person ever to live for probably a generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And not even Lionel Messi can beat that.
No.
He could score another goal, Lionel, but you ain't going to beat your Donald Trump.
No, because there are people like me who don't watch soccer, and I hardly ever know what he's doing. But I can't help
Lionel Messi is.
Trump's doing continually.
Yeah, but you know who Lionel Messi is?
Soccer player.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best there's ever been, of course.
Yeah. But he ain't as famous as Donald Trump.
That's for sure. Okay. All right. So, anything else on the show for today?
No, except, which I always say, do not forget Gaza. There's a genocide going on there, and it's not going to stop. And that is one of the greatest failures of Donald J. Trump, not to bring that to an end like he said he would.
Yeah.
Just turn his back on it.
Well,
Biden gave Netanyahu carte blanche to do the destruction he did, but at least pretended that he wasn't. And Trump just doesn't even care. And there are sickening amounts of suffering going on there, and the world has turned their back on it. And please do not forget the genocide that's going on in Gaza.
Yeah.
And without further ado, I bid you adieu.